Good morning, good afternoon and or good evening, whatever time you're watching this. If you are watching this, thank you. Hello, I'm Dave and today I'm in Southport. Well, technically I'm heading to Churchtown, but there's a reason and you'll see why when I get there. If you watch the Chester video, it's going to be pretty much the same setup. We're going to have a wander about, we'll find some interesting things, I'll give you some history, I'll tell you what I know, or at least what I think I know. And if you know different or I'm wrong, then as always I encourage you to leave it in the comments. But as I do always say, if you are going to correct me, which as I said I do encourage, then leave a source, cite your source and tell me where I can find the information that you've got so I can update my own knowledge. Okay, so let's go and have a look at Southport. But first, a quick detour to Churchtown. Oh, and joining me in this video is my old friend, the crippling fear of filming in public. So it's lovely to have him along. We'll see you in a minute. Okay, so where is Southport and well, what is it? It's a seaside town on the northwest coast of England, roughly 20 miles north of Liverpool. It lays between Liverpool and Blackpool. Blackpool is significantly further away from Southport than Liverpool is, and it's one of those places I've been coming for a long time. I've been coming to Southport for years as a kid, with family, days out, and then when I learned to drive it was the first place I drove to, I think, properly, and it's just far enough away that you actually feel like you've gone somewhere in a car. I didn't drive in today, thought I'd get the train. I didn't want to be limited by car park hours and everything else. But that's where and what Southport is. So while I'm heading to Churchtown, thought I'd give you a little bit of history of the place. There's more to it than I thought initially. There's evidence of hunter-gatherer tribes from the Stone Age. That's the first kind of evidence of human activity in the area. They were attracted by elk, red deer, fish and woodland. And yeah, apparently there is evidence of hunter-gatherer tribes in the area as far back as the Stone Age, which, oh my god, fair enough. Later on it became a settlement. It was a hamlet, and it's mentioned in the Domesday Book as Ota Gamelli. I'll put that on the screen just in case I'm butchering the pronunciation. I probably am, but Ota Gamelli, and that's what it's mentioned as in the Domesday Book. What's the Domesday Book, Dave? Right, fair enough. In 1085, William the Conqueror, after his invasion in 1066 and conquering England and everything else, he needed to know what he had in the country. So he sent his men out to every shire in England and parts of Wales to record his holdings and dues owed to him, which I'm assuming was for tax, and it was all compiled into a big book called the Domesday Book, and that's kind of the first concrete piece of history of where stuff is in the country. So you probably often, if you're looking, if you like history and that kind of thing, you know, you'll hear people saying, oh, there's been a town there since the Domesday Book. Well, that's what it is. It's just a record of everything that William the Conqueror had in the country that he could tax. So every field, every holding, every settlement, everything. And as I say, it was all put into a big book, and it was presented to him the next year in 1086, and that is known as the Domesday Book. That's according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles anyway. Okay, so this is St Cuthbert's. This is one of the reasons I've come up to Churchtown, just to show you this. This is the old, there's been a church, or at least a religious site here, since 1154, and that's what gives Churchtown its name. So there is another reason I'm up here. Let's go and see what it is. And this is the other reason I've come to Churchtown. This is the Hesketh Arms. Well, in 1792, This was known as the Black Bull Inn, and it was run by a man called William Sutton, who was known as the Old Duke, and he's integral to Southport's origin story. So let's get back to Southport and we'll carry on with the tale. Okay, so I've come into Hesketh Park just to get away from the traffic for a minute, and I was going to flesh out more of Southport's history, and I've found an observatory which I did not have any clue was here. So there you go, there's an observatory in Hesketh Park. Who knew? Here's the sign. You can pause the video. I will zoom in a little bit. There you go. You can pause the video and read that for yourself if you want, or Google it. But who knew? We'll have a little look, eh? While we're going up here, I'd just like to give a thank you to Dr. Adam Boardman for his interest and help both with and in this episode. He's a native of Southport, which makes him a sand grounder, which is something I never knew. If you're from Southport, you're a sand grounder. So if you're from Liverpool, you're a Scouser. Birmingham, you're a Geordie. Southport, people from Southport are called sand grounders. How about that? And here we go. I had no idea this was here. So an observatory in Hesketh Park. Okay, so over the years, I'm just going to flesh out the history a little bit more, just to round it out. Over the years, fishing became a huge industry around the area, and several hamlets and small villages began to pop up. Now, excuse me, I am going to have to read these out because I can't remember them all. So bear with me just for 1 second. Okay, notes. From the south end of Lord Street, several of those little villages and hamlets popped up, and from the, as I say, from the south end of Lord Street, south to north, they were South Hawes, Horside, Little London, Higher Blowick, Lower Blowick, Row Lane, Churchtown, Marshside, Crossings and Banks. So if you do know the area at all, they were between, obviously where Banks is now, and the south, very south sort of part or end of Lord Street. Now I don't know what's through this archway, but we're just going to have a look. So yeah, the area was also surrounded by water, and in 1692 it was drained into the Ribble Estuary, which is just north of here, and the area became really good for farming, which you can still, so there's still loads of farms and things driving in. You go through lots and lots of farmland, even on the train. If you look, you can see it all. But because the water, it was flooded, it left really good soil. So there you go. If that's of any interest to you, now you know. And we are getting to the beginnings of Southport, I promise. But there's quite a bit to unpack. So just bear with. I am getting there. But it takes time to tell a good story, doesn't it? Okay, so as previously stated, I've never been in this park before, and I don't know how to get out. I'm sure we'll get there. I'm sure we'll find the exit in a minute. It's quite nice though. Although I've just seen a big rat, which is lovely. But yeah, aside from the big rat, it's a nice little park. There you go, fountain. Couple of fountains. Oh, I think this is the way out. Here we go. Okay, right. I'll be back in a minute. Tell you what, I'm absolutely getting me steps in today. Maybe I should have brought the car. Whew. So, in the late 1700s, it became fashionable for well-to-do people to travel to the seaside for their holidays. Hence the rise of the seaside town. And doctors around this time were beginning to prescribe heading to the coast for ailments, so taking the sea air for bad chests, bathing in salt water for aches and pains, all that kind of thing. And with the newly installed canal system, Southport was sort of right on it, because the canal ran past Scarisbrick, which is just up that way, a couple of miles away, and it was easier to get to than other seaside towns for a lot of people. Blackpool was too far, you know, Southport was the one, and it does try and keep a little bit of that old-timey grandeur about it. It doesn't always pull it off, but walking around you do get the feeling that, you know, back in the day this was the place to be. There was also the salt bathing tradition carried on right up until the 50s, when around this area, sort of the promenade, there was a massive saltwater swimming pool, big outdoor lake if you like. I will try and find a photograph and put it up. And off the back of all that doctor's advice, in steps the enterprising Mr. William Sutton. Remember him, the old Duke? He had the Black Bull Inn up at Churchtown. Well, I'm down at the bottom of Lord Street now, south end of Lord Street, and this area was known as South Hawes. And somewhere in this area, William Sutton built a bathhouse to take full advantage of the doctor's advice and people, you know, suffering from ailments, and he somewhere around here he built a bathhouse, and this proves it. There we go. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a plaque here in memory of D.W. Sutton of North Meals. Apparently it's not pronounced Mells, it's pronounced Meals, who was the first founder and executor of Southport. There you go. So how did that come about? Well, in 1792 he opened the bathhouse. Then in 1797 a widow from Wigan apparently built a lodging house in the area. So not to be outdone, Mr. William Sutton, the old Duke, he knocked the bathhouse down and he built a hotel, and he called it the Southport Hotel. So Southport Hotel, and people thought he was nuts, because he even set a transport link up from the canal at Scarisbrick, about 4 miles that way, to the Southport Hotel, which became known as the Duke's Folly, because, as I say, people thought he was insane. But he kept it going, he chugged along, and that hotel lasted until around 1850. And at the bottom of Lord Street, just along here, one of the shoot-off streets off the roundabout is Duke Street. Let's just see if I can zoom in there. And Duke Street is named after the old Duke, kind of a nod to the old, yeah, I might be able to see it better here. No. And if you come up, but I promise you this is Duke Street. Let's try and get it. Okay, there you go, Duke Street. And just up here, as kind of a nod to the history, this is the Duke's Folly Hotel. So they've kept it going. But as I say, the original hotel was here till around 1850, and it done quite well, because Southport became kind of a booming seaside town. So there you go, that's that little bit of history for you. One unique thing about Southport is it's got Britain's only lawnmower museum. So if lawnmowers are your thing, there's a museum in Southport. Obviously I'm not going, but you can if you want. And the last little thing I want to mention about Churchtown, in the 1500s apparently there was a shipwreck off the coast of Churchtown, and a load of potatoes washed up off onto the shore, which made Churchtown the first town in England to grow spuds. I didn't know that. I don't know how true it is. Make your own mind up on that one, but that's what I've heard. I just forgot to mention it while we were up there. I'm guessing this would have been a cinema at some point. It's a shame the way they let these old buildings go like this, isn't it? Money, I suppose. But yeah, I bet you that was very grand back in the day. By 1820, Southport was getting 20,000 visitors a year. Considering there was no cars, and, you know, the main mode of transport was horse and cart, that's pretty good. I mean, it was helped by the canal, but 20,000 people a year, that's in 1820, I think that's pretty good going. So in either 1838 or 1846, depending on what you read, Prince Louis Napoleon Bonaparte III, not the little French lunatic, no, his nephew, is believed to have either stayed, lived or lodged, off Lord Street in Southport or somewhere around here. And these streets are supposed to be the inspiration for the tree-lined streets in Paris. So the big tree-lined Parisian boulevards are supposed to have been, he's supposed to have seen the Lord Street here and thought, oh, I like it, I like that, we'll have a little bit of that. So when he became Emperor of France, he instigated a big building project and widened all the streets in Paris, well, many of the streets in Paris, and they believe Lord Street inspired him. So, I mean, whether you believe it or not is entirely up to yourself, but that's what they say. And it seems to be every third or fourth building along Lord Street was a bank at one point. There's one. And there's another one, although that one actually is a bank. And this one feels like it could have been a bank, but yeah, it might not have been. I think it was a bookshop. Looks like a bank though. So this is Southport Pier, and it's closed. Essential maintenance work apparently, so we won't be able to get on it, but we will go down to the front. We'll go across the Millennium Bridge just next to it there. We'll go down to the water and well, I'll tell you about the pier. Let's go. Carousel in absolute full swing there. I won't film too much, but yeah, there you go. So there is the pier. 3,500 feet long, 3,650 to be precise. It was opened in 1860 and it cost £8,700 to build in 1860, which is roughly £900,000 today, maybe £500 below. It was the first true pleasure pier, so it was the first pier built to be an actual pleasure pier. And it's the second longest in the UK after Brighton, and it was the first pier to be made of iron as well. And if I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can see Blackpool just up there, so that's, now let me just see if I can, hold on, there we go, there's Blackpool just up there. And little kid making a break for freedom. Yeah, so I'm gonna cut it and just check this wind isn't too bad, because I want to tell you about something that happened just out there. Okay, so on the night of the 9th of December 1886, just out there in the bay, occurred the worst lifeboat disaster in UK history, and I'm going to tell you the story. On that night there was a ship, the Mexico. It was sailing from Liverpool to South America, and it got into trouble in a storm just outside, out there on the bay. And 3 lifeboats, one from Southport, the Eliza Fernley, one from Lytham, just up there, the Charlie, I believe, and one from St Anne's, the Laura Janet, were all launched to try and go to the vessel's aid. Unfortunately, the Laura Janet and the Eliza Fernley capsized, and all but one of the 27 of the 29 crew of those 2 boats were lost. It was the worst lifeboat disaster up to that point or since, and I don't want to bring the video down, obviously, but I just thought that needed to be mentioned, because it left 16 wives widows, and it left over 50 kids without a dad. A little bit of a heavy one to end the video on, but I just want to say that if you've ever seen a lifeboat launch today, that orange and blue lifeboat hurtling down the ramp into the water when a call goes out, you can't imagine how brave those people must be to do that. even with all the safety equipment and the engine, the powered boat. Now, back in 1886, they didn't have that. These men went out in rowing boats. I can't even imagine how brave you would have to be to row out in a rowing boat in a storm to rescue people. I just want to say the 12 crew of the Mexico were rescued. It did sink, but the boat from Lytham managed to rescue them, the Charlie. I think it was the Charlie. I can't be quite sure. But the other two, the Laura Janet and the Eliza Fernley, capsized. And so I don't really put views across in these videos. I don't really do it. But I think it's disgusting that as an island nation, our lifeboat service isn't government funded. At least I don't think it is. If it isn't, it should be, because that I can't imagine. I can't contemplate the bravery of those men and women, all volunteers, who jump on a boat and steam into stormy weather to rescue people. I just don't I can't fathom how brave you would have to be to do that. Mainly because I'm terrified of drowning. But they should be an emergency service, and they should be absolutely government funded, and I think it's horrific that they're not. Not that anyone's going to take any notice of this particular video, but that's just my thoughts on it. I'm not getting political. I don't do all that. I don't go there, but that's just my thoughts on it. I think they're incredibly brave people, and they deserve all the funding they get, all the funding they need, because we're an island that we're surrounded by water. They should be an emergency service. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And we're coming to the end of the video. So I'm sorry to end it on a bum note. Sorry to end it on a heavy one, but we've seen Southport now. There you go. If you're still watching, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. As I said before, if I've said anything that you know to be wrong or different, please feel free to comment down below and correct me. I do encourage it, but I will ask, please, as I always say, cite your source so I can go and have a look. I don't think not that I think you're lying or I disbelieve you. Let me go and check it for myself. Right, well, that was Southport. I hope you've had a good time. I am going home because I'm cold. I will see you all in the next one. Take care all. Thanks for watching. Bye. Just walking back. Noisy. So I'm just walking back, and I realised I haven't mentioned the fair. But there's a fair in Southport. There's not a lot else to say. It's a fair. We all know what fairs look like. It is what it is. If you want to check out, there's other videos on it, I'm sure. Yeah. So that was Southport. I'm going for the train because I am cold. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.